Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this PICPA CPA-PAC interview discussion with Judge Stella Tsai. Judge Tsai, good morning, and again, welcome. As I said, I'm Peter Calcara, Vice President of Government Relations. Very quickly, PICPA is the second oldest and fifth largest CPA organization in the country. We represent 18,000 CPAs from across the spectrum, from public accounting. Many of the members are on public accounting. Many on the call this morning are public accounting, business and industry, education, and government. So we kind of run the spectrum of CPAs all over the place. The purpose of this call is really to do, we're calling them as meet and greets, just giving our members an opportunity to meet the candidates for judge, because as we know, these judge races sometimes aren't very high profile for the public, but we want to give our members an opportunity to learn a little bit more about you. Obviously, they can do a deeper dive if necessary through different, the Bar Association or what have you, but really just want to have a kind of a casual conversation, allow you to introduce yourself to our members. So with that, again, welcome, and we look forward to learning a little bit more about you. And would like to just start off by just, tell us a little bit more about yourself and why you're running for Commonwealth Court.
All right. Well, that's a big question, so I'll address it. So, hi, everybody. I'm Stella Tsai. I'm a judge of the Court of Common Pleas in Philadelphia. I was appointed in 2016 by Governor Tom Wolf, and then won election on my own right in 2017. Since I've been on the bench, I've served, and we'll start with the criminal court, then I moved to civil, then asked to do some work in family, back to civil, and now I sit in orphans court, where I preside over cases involving trusts and estates, and actually there are 27 areas of jurisdiction, including digital assets, which I think a very interesting thing. I'm very interested to hear what the CPA's perspective is on how to address those matters. But in any event, I have handled many types of cases that have gone to the Commonwealth Court when there's a lawyer, mostly focused on voting rights and trying to protect individuals. And then I started out I've been practicing law I practiced law for 30 some years before I joined the bench. And when I was in private practice, I worked in all sorts of areas of commercial litigation, but then I also moved to the city law department, where I oversaw the attorneys and managed the caseload in the department they created for me to run, which is the Department of Administrative Law, where we manage the cases involving labor and employment, and also address cases involving the social service agencies. And after that, I did a lot of work. When I left this law department, I did a lot of work. It was government adjacent, including volunteering to help rewrite our city zoning code. I was actually, I would say, voluntold by our mayor at the time, who was Mayor Nutter, but it was something that I thought would be very helpful and useful. Ended up developing doing some work in land use, which is something that it matters a lot to people. And after that, did some work in regulations, especially did some work in the nonprofit world, trying to actually help wind down a few large nonprofits that were targeted for, were asked to disband because of funding priorities. So just a lot of interesting work, which I think did intersect with the world that you live in.
Yeah.
And certainly in terms of what I want to serve on the Commonwealth Court, Commonwealth Court was created in '68, as many of you know, to address the government agency issues, local and state, but it also serve as a trial court when it comes to the Commonwealth, both as a plaintiff and defendant. As a result, they address some of the most important issues that crosses all sectors, including what I mentioned before, voting rights, free and fair elections, public education, workers' compensation, the environment, uh, workers' rights, unemployment compensation. All there are just many, many areas of that the Commonwealth Court is responsible for or addressing when those appeals come up or when they have to try those cases as judges. To me, can I add a little bit more? Do you have time for that?
Yeah,
Just want to add
absolutely,
more.
absolutely.
Okay.
And I just add one more to your list. It also
Yeah,
considers tax appeals from the Board of
tax
Finance
appeals,
and
right?
Revenue.
That's right. So many, and, I think that these many areas are so vital, important, and need to have. I think it's helpful to have judicial experience in addressing this wide variety of issues because I think we have the capacity or have learned how to address many issues. And you can tell from I would just say that uh, the areas that I've covered in being a judge is not unlike that of a judge in a small county who has to deal with everything. So I like to tout my diverse experience, but I do recognize that it's not unlike folks who are in Potter County, et cetera. So, but I do think it's important to understand that I have the capacity and have the uh, I am nimble enough to get from one area to another with the humility to know that I have to learn what I need to learn, including more about tax appeals.
Yeah.
uh,
We're happy to
so
help in that area.
I will tell you that I was born in the United States, born in America, born in Harrisburg.
Middletown. I saw that. You're
You saw that Middletown.
Central
Yeah, I grew up in
Pennsylvania. Yes.
Laura Sotera, to be more specific.
Okay.
I was born in the United States because my parents had a chance to leave Taiwan at a time that it was controlled by a really repressive regime that imposed martial law, believe it or not, till 1987. That regime imprisoned my uncle Tetsu Wu for 18 years for the crime of producing plays that were critical of the government. I'm not sure if it was actually in the books, but it was what he was in prison for. And he was incarcerated in a place called Green Island and survived because he happened to pick up the dentistry skills from my grandfather. So with that background, and I traveled back to Taiwan as a child, and I remember this is one of those things that implanted in your hippocampus, but you remember that we were sitting at home talking to each other and maybe talking we're a little animated in our discussion, and I were just told to, quiet, shush. And the question why is because they're worried that our neighbors might report us to the authorities. And who knows where that would lead. So I kind of had that experience. And also, my uncle did make it over to the United States through family unification and opened up an ice cream shop in Alexandria, Virginia, and was one of the happiest, most cheerful people you would ever meet. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that he was in a country that was free, where he could express himself without reservation, and where he cared very much, just had the opportunity to thrive as who he was. And those kind of values certainly resonated with me and became very important. I mean, the notion of democracy and making sure that we have our three branches of government, all those kind of things I really have taken to heart since I was a child. And I'm very grateful to be part of the judicial branch, and to stand up and do what's right by our people. So when this opportunity came about, and I knew that they were charged with such important issues, I had to take a shot.
So why did you choose to pursue a career in law?
Oh, well, maybe Atticus Finch. um, I we did name our son Atticus, just Atticus. I do think that it was one of those things where I was probably expected at the time when I was growing up in our culture, Asian American culture, the expectation was I would have to become a doctor. And being inspired by people like Atticus Finch, and also loving to write and read and to debate and do all those kind of things, I kind of felt like that would be an appropriate avenue for me. I just tell you that I looked at back in my high school yearbook, and I realized that I was expecting to be, and you'll laugh at this, general counsel of Wanamaker's, which is no longer with us. So, oh well. But I think over the years, I mean, I was an intern at the state legislature when I was in college, and saw the process of lawmaking, and actually drafted a piece of legislation regarding the Chesapeake Bay. And I like to think that something happened with that, and it just wasn't a dead letter. But
Can I ask who you worked for? Did you work for a member
yes,
or?
I was. I worked for the Bipartisan Management Committee.
Oh, okay.
And this will date me. You'll know exactly how old I am. But the person I worked for was John Davies from Berks County.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I'll date myself because that's
Okay.
that's about when I started too.
Oh, okay. So you know these.
I like to say I
people.
started working in the General Assembly last century,
Oh,
in the mid '80s.
I'm right with you. And I've actually grew close with members of the caucus that I had been a member of at the time as a Republican. I worked with Jim Greenwood, if you know Jim Greenwood,
Oh,
who's
of
now
course. Yeah.
became a congressperson, and Lois.
Haggerty?
Lois Haggerty, who I just saw recently. Just really good group of people and very great mentors. But I really enjoyed that work. But really, I think I was kind of destined to become a lawyer. Become a judge is another question, though. I think was more organic, and one of those things where I won't say it was thrust upon me, but it was certainly something that people saw that I had the capacity to do before I really realized it myself. Maybe it felt like it's hard to believe I'm sitting where I am right now.
Yeah.
But I am delighted to be here doing this work.
What type of experience or interaction have you had with our profession, the CPA profession?
I've been thinking about that and I have had many encounters, a lot of forensics
Okay.
stuff, but I remember when I was at the city law department, we engaged a firm that had CPAs involved to help us determine whether there are questions about overtime at one of our facilities, and so it was important to engage somebody. And I have to tell you that in terms of credibility, and I'm not just saying this because it's you, but this happens to be my experience. I'll just share that. But I found that the accountants and CPAs who testify in court are pretty well regarded by the juries that I see, including fact finders like me, because of just the methodology. It's, everything that you have to do, your being licensed, having to abide by certain standards, et cetera. And I think, and I don't want to, I just will say this, that because of the fact you have to be straightforward and, just very factual with what you have to present, that tends to, I think it tends to resonate with jurors and with fact finders.
Yeah.
And I've had really great expert witnesses that I've used, and I actually have one right now looking at the books of a cemetery. So.
Okay. Well, it's good to know.
Yeah.
Is there is there a case that you've been involved in, or one that you kind of look at that you think has had, that you believe has had a really big impact on the business community in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, or the business or Pennsylvania in general?
Business community. Well, I'm not sure how you might respond to this one, but just recently, there was a case that came down the Supreme Court, which Superior Court affirming my decision below, which was a question about Sky Zone, not the financial community, but the business community. As I say, Sky Zone, where there was a question about a father, whether the father could sign off on a arbitration agreement for his son and cut off his right to a jury trial or whatever, his rights to have a fair trial of any claims that they may have. And also the question is whether the father who signed the release could also represent or sign away his spouse's rights. And there's a question of agency. And I said that they couldn't. And Supreme Court just affirmed that.
Oh, okay. And it's called Sky Zone?
Sky Zone, yeah. There's a
Okay.
lot of business activity supporting the business side of it, which I can understand, but I think there are probably other ways of getting at what they're trying to address.
Appreciate that. We maybe touched a little bit around this, but how do you view your role, or how do you view the role of a judge, and how would you describe kind of your judicial philosophy?
All right.
Loaded question.
So, it's a very loaded question, but a very fair one. I would say my approach to decision making my philosophy is really just to be, just quite frankly, just to keep an open mind and make sure that when and that's important because I think our courts are supposed to allow each person who comes before them to be treated with fairness and impartiality and with ethically, and that our decision making needs to be made without preconceived notions, and that we need to take a minute before we make a decision, because I think there is I'm not saying that you take forever, but sometimes we come into our role with some preconceived notions of how things should play out. And sometimes they often do not, I have to tell you that. And also that it's important just to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. And in fact, when I have jurors, I instruct them to try their best to rid their minds of anything that might jump to the conclusions they may jump to based on the way somebody looks, the way they, are acting, or the way their facial expressions are, but just to listen to the testimony and actually to hear what's being said and under oath. And so it's just important because I think that if you see like hey, here comes this guy. Well, okay, I'll give that. Accountants might get a, automatic, plus points from us, as I said before. But I have to say that we often have cases where you kind of see the facts as they are, and you just have to wait to hear the testimony. And sometimes what you see and what you read are so different from each other. So you have to really look behind it. And to me, that's critical just to make so that we can make decisions that are, and I like to say, without fear or favor. Because sometimes people think there are political pressures out there. By the way, we're not allowed to consider, we're not supposed to be partisan. We can't be partisan. Once we put on that robe, not partisan. And we also just need to discharge our responsibilities under the Constitution and under the law. And that's just kind of my approach. I guess that would be my philosophy.
Okay. I wanted to open it up to just have a couple more minutes. Any of the PAC board members, if you have any questions, follow-up comments that you'd like to share with Judge Tsai before we wrap it up. Well, I have one final question, sure. Judge. Kind of what is your vision for the future of the judicial system in Pennsylvania? Any thoughts or any ideas on changes, or are you happy with the way it's functioning now?
Well, so I think that it's important that we look at a court and its function and but understand what's going on behind the scenes, right? So that's always a question about having served in government. Sometimes we have these policies that we develop that we're not sure why, but there's usually a reason, and sometimes it's not a very good reason. So it's hard for me from within our courts. I will tell you that I have made it my business to ensure that it's accessible to people in many ways. For example, in orphans court, I don't know if any of you have been through orphans court yet, and please update your wills, etc. So you don't have to see us. But there's a lot of Latin. And when I came here, the orders said et sec, you know, all these things, sui juris, all these words, and we have a population that doesn't necessarily take Latin and may not understand what those particular terms are. So I have now put footnotes on all the orders just because I think it's still important that I comply with whatever exists in our laws and, you know, make sure I use the right words, but I make sure that people understand what they are. I also make it a point to explain my decisions to people and to make sure that in language that they understand, you know, well, like I understand. And so I hope, like, I like to make sure it's simple and clear because people, when they come to the courts, if they don't understand why courts make a decision, it doesn't become something they can accept, even if I rule against them. And may I share one story? Or do you have
Of course. Sure. Absolutely.
I'll just share one story about a litigant who had been fighting the same fight for 15 years and trying time and time again, coming at the court, and someone called her a frequent flyer. And she came to me. I had to deal with one of her new complaints, and it had these new statutes that might or might not have been relevant to her claim so many years ago. But in the past, people kind of just may have, and I don't mean to be critical, but I have a different approach, let's put it this way, but may have Britain just denied or whatever it was, or sustained just to remove her complaint from the system, dismiss her complaint. And I think it was important to explain to her exactly why I was ruling a certain way. You know, here's a statute, your claim doesn't fly because. And it was very simple. It wasn't the longest opinion in the world, but just something about 5-10 pages. And she appealed me, of course, because I dismissed her complaint. And in her 1925 B statement, which you guys might be familiar with that, right? You know, when you have to explain what the issues are that you're appealing. Okay. She writes, Judge Stella, you saved my life. And I recognize it's a little dramatic, but it was something that was very meaningful to me because I recognized that she heard what I was saying. And she just thanked me for actually at least hearing what she was trying to argue. Yeah. And so we don't always get these opportunities because most litigants, you know, they like you if you rule for them, they don't like you, you know, that kind of thing, right? So you don't get these kind of moments, right? And I'm just so delighted to have this. And then she writes in the middle, after I was saying all these nice things about you, Your Honor, you're flat wrong. Here's why, you know? And I could not have been happier with that piece of that pleading, because it just told me that at least something was working and that at least I was getting through. And that to me is important. So I think if anything, be more transparent. But I'd say with respect to specific changes, you know, I wouldn't especially in the Commonwealth Court, to see how things are before I even begin to think of what I might suggest. But I really enjoyed my work here, but I'm ready to go to the next level. And I would love to have your support and vote.
Well, I was going to close with that. So again, why should our members vote for you for Commonwealth Court?
Well, I certainly have the experience. Just so you know, you can feel confident going into a polling place with this, because I also, including my opponent, Mr. Wolford, we both have been highly recommended by the Pennsylvania Bar Association. I was also happy to be highly recommended by the Philadelphia Bar Association too. Lots of endorsements, but also just understand that I will take, and I've said this before, I have worked very hard to ensure that our litigants are treated with our fairness and impartiality, and that you can be guaranteed that any decision I make will be made to deliver justice without fear or favor.
Well, thank you. We appreciate the time. Judge Stella Tsai, thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry about
Good
my
luck.
lateness.
No worries at all.
Okay.
Thank you and good luck on November 4th.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day.
Thank
Take care.